Captain Jinho pressed his face against the cold metal of the observation deck window. Below him stretched the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. 12 million ships of every size and shape floated in the darkness of space, their lights twinkling like stars against the black void. "This is really happening," whispered Commander Sujin beside him. Her voice shook slightly as she spoke. "They're actually throwing us out." Jinho nodded slowly. He had commanded starships for 30 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Every human being in the galaxy was packed into these vessels. Men, women, children, elderly people, scientists, farmers, soldiers, artists, everyone. The message from the Galactic Confederation still echoed in his mind. The 12 alien species had spoken with one voice through their leader, a tall creature, with blue skin and 6 arms. "Humanity is too dangerous. Your species fights too much. You start wars. You cannot stay in our peaceful galaxy." Admiral Wusiak walked onto the observation deck. His old face looked tired and angry. "The barrier is almost ready," he said. "They're using gravity machines to push us out. Big ones, bigger than anything we've ever seen." Dr. Haiwan looked up from her tablet computer. "I've been running the numbers again. The nearest galaxy is 4 million light-years away. With our current ships, it would take us 50,000 years to get there. Most of us will die long before that." "Then we better learn to live in empty space," Jinho replied. Through the window, they could see Earth growing smaller. The blue marble that had been humanity's home for millions of years was becoming just another dot of light. Many people were crying. Some were angry. Others sat in shocked silence. The Confederation had been planning this for years. They built massive energy barriers at the edge of the galaxy. These barriers would push all the human ships out into the void between galaxies. The aliens called it merciful exile. They said it was better than destroying humanity completely. "Remember how this started?" Sujin asked. "That stupid fight over the mining rights in the Kepler system?" Jinho remembered. 2 human colonies had argued over who could mine asteroids in that system. The argument became a fight. The fight became a small war. No one died, but the aliens saw it and decided humanity was too violent to live among civilized species. "We lived with them for 2,000 years, Admiral Wusiak said bitterly. "We helped them fight off space pirates. We shared our technology. We followed their laws. But one little conflict and suddenly we're monsters who need to be thrown away." Young Captain Doyon joined them on the observation deck. She was only 25 years old, but she had already proven herself as one of the fleet's best pilots. "The children are scared," she reported. "They don't understand why we have to leave. They want to go home." "This is their home now," Jinho said, gesturing at the ships around them. "All of this. We're not just running away. We're taking our civilization with us." The gravity machines activated with a deep humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Slowly, the entire human fleet began to move away from the galaxy. The movement was gentle but unstoppable, like being carried by a river current. Dr. Haiwan watched her instruments carefully. "The energy readings are incredible. They're using the gravity of black holes to push us out. We couldn't fight this, even if we wanted to." Through the communication system, they could hear messages from ships all across the fleet. Families saying goodbye to the galaxy where their ancestors had lived. Children asking when they could come home. Old people wondering if they would die before seeing another planet. "What do we do now?" Sujin asked. Admiral Wusiak straightened his uniform and looked out at the fleet. "We survive. We adapt. We become something new out there in the dark." "And then?" Captain Doyon asked. The old admiral's eyes grew hard. "Then we come back, but not as the same people they threw away. We'll return as something they never expected, something they'll wish they had never created." The barrier pushed them, faster now. The galaxy behind them grew smaller and smaller until it looked like just another spiral of stars in the distance. Ahead lay nothing but empty space. Darkness. Cold. The vast emptiness between galaxies where no life was supposed to exist. But humanity had always been good at living where they weren't supposed to. They had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters. They had learned to live underwater, in deserts in the frozen Arctic, and in the vacuum of space itself. "Send a message to all ships," Jinho ordered. "Tell them this isn't the end of our story. This is just the beginning of a new chapter. Tell them to remember this day. Remember how it felt to be thrown away like garbage. Because someday we're going to make sure no one ever forgets what happens when you underestimate humanity." As the last light of their home galaxy faded behind them, 12 million ships carrying the future of humanity sailed into the dark void, carrying with them a burning desire for survival and eventually return. 300 years had passed since the Great Exile began. The human fleet now looked nothing like it had when they first entered the void. Ships had been connected together with metal bridges and tunnels, creating massive floating cities in the darkness of space. Engineer Taemin floated through the corridors of New Seoul Station, one of the largest habitat clusters. His body moved easily in the zero gravity, but that wasn't the most remarkable thing about him. His bones were 3 times denser than his ancestors who had lived on Earth. His eyes could see in almost complete darkness. His lungs could hold oxygen for an hour without breathing. "The fusion reactors are running better than ever," he reported to Director So-young. "We're getting 127% efficiency now. The physics books from the old galaxy said this was impossible, but we're doing it. Anyway." So-young smiled. She was one of the new generation born in the void. Her skin had a slight blue tint that helped her body process the strange radiation found in empty space. Impossible is just a word the Confederation used to limit themselves. We don't have that luxury out here. In the medical bay, Dr. Minwoo examined a group of children. These kids had never seen a planet or breathed natural air, but they were healthier and stronger than any humans in history. Their hearts pumped more efficiently. Their brains processed information faster. Their reflexes were incredible. "Look at this," he said to his assistant, showing brain scans on his computer. "These children can communicate with each other without speaking. Not telepathy exactly, but something close to it. They share thoughts and feelings in ways we're still trying to understand." The assistant, a young woman named Hyojin, nodded. She was part of the new generation too. "We call it the deep link. When you grow up in the void, surrounded by the same people all the time, you learn to connect in different ways." Captain Yoon-ji commanded one of the new Wraith-class ships. These vessels were unlike anything that had existed in the galaxy. They could bend light around themselves, becoming nearly invisible. They moved without making any sound or energy signature that normal sensors could detect. "We've been watching our old galaxy for decades," she told her crew during a briefing. "We've mapped every major system, every trade route, every military base. We know where their leaders live, where they keep their weapons, where their children go to school. When we return, we'll know them better than they know themselves." Her crew listened carefully. Half of them had been born in the void, and half were from the original exile generation. But they all shared the same burning purpose that had kept humanity alive in the darkness. The human fleet had split into 3 main groups over the centuries. The makers focused on building impossible technologies. They created ships that could repair themselves and weapons that worked in ways that defied the old laws of physics. Their leader, Master Builder Hyun-sik, had designed space stations that could create matter from pure energy. The adapted focused on changing themselves. They had used genetic modification, cybernetic implants, and biological enhancement to become something more than human. They could survive in any environment, from the crushing gravity of gas giants to the vacuum of space itself. Their leader, Colonel Ji-won, looked human from a distance, but up close you could see the silver threads under her skin and the way her eyes glowed in the dark. The hunters focused on warfare. They had spent 3 centuries studying every form of combat ever invented and creating new ones. They moved like shadows and struck like lightning. Their leader, General Yeon-soo, was now very old but still deadly. She had trained thousands of warriors who could fight with weapons with their bare hands or with their minds. Despite their differences, All three groups worked together. They shared technology, knowledge, and resources. The exile had taught them that humanity was strongest when united. Young Captain Doyon, now in her 50s, stood in the command center of the main fleet. She had grown up during the early years of exile and remembered the fear and confusion of those times. Now she looked out at the thriving civilization they had built in the void. The long-range sensors are picking up interesting signals from our old galaxy, she reported to the Fleet Council. It looks like they're having some kind of crisis. Multiple distress calls from different systems. Admiral Wusok, now ancient but still sharp, studied the reports. What kind of crisis? Unknown. But whatever it is, their peaceful weapons aren't working against it. They're asking for help from anyone who will listen. The council members looked at each other. Many of them had been children when the exile began. They had grown up in the darkness, shaped by hardship and driven by the memory of being thrown away like garbage. How ironic, said Dr. Haiwan, now the fleet's chief scientist. The galaxy that cast us out for being too violent is now facing something violent enough to scare them. Admiral Wusok smiled grimly. Then perhaps it's time to show them what we've become in the darkness they sent us to. Begin preparations for Operation Homecoming. After 3 centuries of exile, humanity is ready to return home. Fleet Admiral. Dong-hyun walked through the massive halls of the Command Nexus, the brain center of humanity's void civilization. 500 years had passed since exile began, and what he saw around him would have seemed like magic to their ancestors who first left the galaxy. The walls themselves were alive, made from a strange metal that could think and repair itself. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing real-time information from across their vast fleet. Children ran through the corridors, their laughter echoing in spaces that had never known the warmth of a sun. The final preparations are complete, reported General Ji-won as she approached. Her appearance was striking even by void-born standards. Silver lines ran under her translucent skin, and her eyes glowed with a soft blue light. She had volunteered, for the most extreme modifications, to become the perfect soldier. Show me, Dong-hyun said. They walked to the main observation deck where the true scope of humanity's transformation became visible. The original 12 million ships had grown into something unrecognizable. Massive ring-shaped cities rotated, slowly in space. Factory complexes the size of small moons churned out new vessels every day. Strange geometric structures that seemed to bend space around them housed the most advanced research facilities. The Phantom Fleet is ready for deployment, Ji-won continued. 10,000 ships that exist in a state between dimensions. Their sensors can't detect them because technically, they're not entirely in this reality. Master Builder Hyun-sik joined them on the deck. His body was more machine than human now, with mechanical arms that could work at the molecular level and a brain enhanced with quantum processors. The Void Forge is our greatest achievement, he said proudly, pointing to a massive structure in the distance. It can create matter from dark energy itself. We're no longer limited by physical resources. If we need 1 million ships, we can build them in a matter of days. But the most remarkable development was invisible to the naked eye. Dr. Seo Jin, the fleet's lead researcher in human enhancement, demonstrated it during their meeting. She closed her eyes and suddenly every person in the room could hear her thoughts as clearly as if she had spoken. The psychic network connects every human in the fleet, her mental voice explained. Distance doesn't matter. We can share thoughts, memories, skills, and reactions instantly across billions of minds. In battle, we don't fight as individuals or even as units. We fight as a single organism with billions of bodies. Young Captain Doyon, now middle-aged and scarred from years of void operations, studied the tactical displays. She had spent decades mapping their old galaxy, learning every weakness and strength of the species that had exiled them. The Confederation has grown soft, she reported. 1,000 years of peace has made them weak. They've forgotten what war looks like. Their weapons are designed to disable, not destroy. Their tactics focus on avoiding conflict rather than winning it. Admiral, Dong-hyun nodded. The irony was perfect. The galaxy had thrown humanity out for being too violent, and in doing so, had created something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. "What about their defenses?" he asked. "Laughable," Doyen replied. "They rely on energy shields and diplomatic immunity. They've never faced an enemy that could phase through dimensions or attack on a quantum level. Most of their soldiers have never seen real combat. The transformation wasn't just technological. The humans themselves had evolved in ways that would terrify their former neighbors. Some could survive in the vacuum of space without suits. Others could manipulate gravity with their minds. A few had become living weapons, their bodies capable of generating destructive energy. But perhaps the most important change was psychological. The exile had burned away humanity's capacity for mercy toward those who had wronged them. Every child born in the void grew up hearing stories of the great betrayal. Every adult carried the memory of being cast out like unwanted trash. "The distress signals from the galaxy are getting stronger," reported Communications Officer Minho. "Whatever's attacking them is moving fast. 3 more systems have gone silent this week." Admiral Dong Hyun smiled coldly. "How convenient. They need help, and we happen to be the most qualified species in the universe to provide it." General Ji-won's enhanced eyes gleamed. "Should we respond to their calls for aid?" "Oh yes," Dong Hyun replied, "but not in the way they expect. We won't announce ourselves or ask for permission. We'll return as we choose, when we choose, how we choose." Master Builder Hyun-sik activated a holographic display showing the galaxy they had once called home. "Operation Homecoming is ready to begin. We have infiltration teams prepared to enter undetected, scout ships that can map every system without being seen. And when the time comes for open warfare, we have weapons they can't even imagine. Remember," Admiral Dong Hyun addressed his commanders, "we're not going back as refugees seeking forgiveness. We're not going back as the same species they threw away. We're returning as something new, something they created when they cast us into the darkness." He paused, looking out at the vast civilization they had built in the void between galaxies. "When we reveal ourselves, it won't be as supplicants begging to come home. It will be as gods of war, claiming what is rightfully ours." The long preparation was complete. Humanity was ready to return. Sensor operator Kexathari had worked the night shift at Confederation Deep Space Station Alpha 7 for 12 years. In all that time, he had never seen anything unusual. The galaxy was peaceful. Pirates were rare. Wars were a thing of the ancient past. His job was boring, which was exactly how he liked it. Tonight was different. A small blip appeared on his screen for exactly 3 seconds, then vanished. The computer said it was probably a piece of space debris, but something felt wrong. The signal had been too organized, too purposeful. "Computer, replay sensor data from grid section 7 Alpha," he said in his native clicking language. The data showed nothing. According to the sensors, empty space was still empty, but Kexathari had sharp eyes and good instincts. He knew something had been there. Across the galaxy, similar strange readings began appearing. A brief gravity distortion near the Vega system, an impossible energy signature in the Altair region, shadows that moved where no objects existed. The Confederation scientists dismissed these reports as sensor errors or natural phenomena. They were wrong. Dr. J. Hayek materialized from darkness inside the Kepler Prime research station like a ghost stepping through walls. His body had been modified over centuries of evolution in the void. He could bend light around himself, making him nearly invisible. His feet made no sound on the metal floors. His presence didn't register on any security systems. The alien researchers working the night shift never saw him. He moved through their facility like smoke, copying every piece of data about Confederation, fleet movements, weapon systems, and defensive strategies. The information flowed through quantum channels back to the human fleet, still hidden in the darkness between galaxies. Within an hour, he was gone. The only trace of his visit was a slight temperature drop in the computer core, which the maintenance staff blamed on a faulty heating unit. Captain Miran commanded the stealth ship Silent Dagger as it drifted through the Altair system. Her vessel was a masterpiece of void-born engineering. It existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that conventional sensors couldn't detect. To any observer, it appeared to be nothing more than empty space. Her crew worked, in perfect silence, not because they had to be quiet, but because they could communicate through the psychic link that connected all void-born humans. Thoughts flowed between them like water, carrying complex instructions and emotional support. They planted monitoring devices on asteroids, space stations, and trade routes. These devices were smaller than coins but more powerful than the Confederation's largest computers. They would watch and listen, sending information back to the human fleet through channels that couldn't be detected or blocked. Phase 1 complete, Miran reported through the quantum link to Commander Insu, who was coordinating similar operations in 50 other systems. We have full surveillance coverage of this sector. The infiltration had been going on for months. Hundreds of human operatives had slipped into Confederation space like shadows. They studied alien technology, mapped military installations, and observed daily life in the galaxy they had once called home. What they found was exactly what they had expected. The Confederation had grown weak during humanity's exile. Their weapons were designed to stun rather than kill. Their soldiers trained for peacekeeping rather than warfare. Their leaders had forgotten that the universe could be a dangerous place. Admiral Sung Ho, now ancient but still sharp as a blade, reviewed the intelligence reports from his flagship Void's Edge. The massive vessel was hidden in a nebula at the galaxy's rim, invisible to all sensors but capable of watching everything that happened in nearby systems. They've become like children, he told his war council. Innocent, trusting, completely unprepared for real danger. It's almost sad. Almost, agreed General Jiwan. Her enhanced body allowed her to process information faster than any computer. But they made their choice when they cast us out. They wanted to live in a galaxy without humanity's violence. Now they'll learn what violence really looks like. The Confederation leaders finally began to notice that something was wrong when patrol ships started detecting traces of unknown technology. Energy signatures that didn't match any known species. Metal fragments that were made from materials that shouldn't exist. Gravitational distortions that suggested massive objects moving through space. Emergency meetings were called. Scientists analyzed the data. Military commanders reviewed security protocols. But they were looking for external threats, never imagining that their greatest enemy had already returned and was watching them from the shadows. "Sir," reported Intelligence Officer Vextran to the Confederation High Council, "we believe we may be dealing with a new species. The technology signatures don't match anything in our databases." Council Leader Mordain, a wise and ancient being who had been present during humanity's exile, felt a cold chill run down his spine. "Show me the data again." As he studied the readings, a terrible possibility began to form in his mind. The energy patterns were familiar but impossibly advanced. The stealth technology was beyond anything the Confederation had ever seen, and the coordination suggested a level of organization that spoke of a unified, disciplined force. "No," he whispered. "It can't be. They're all dead. The void would have killed them centuries ago." But deep in his heart, he knew the truth. Humanity had returned, not as refugees seeking forgiveness, but as something far more dangerous than the species they had exiled. The galaxy's greatest nightmare was awakening from its long sleep in the darkness. The Devourers came from beyond the galactic rim like a plague of metal locusts. Their ships were massive, ugly things that looked more like floating cities than vessels. They moved through space, consuming everything in their path. Planets, moons, asteroids, even stars themselves. Admiral Vexnar of the Confederation Defense Fleet watched in horror as the colony world of Kepler 442b was stripped bare in less than 6 hours. The Devourers' machines ate through the planet's crust like acid, turning solid matter into fuel for their endless hunger. "Fire all weapons," he commanded his fleet. "Stop them before they reach the next system." The Confederation ships opened fire with their most powerful weapons. Energy beams that could crack moons struck the Devourer vessels without leaving so much as a scratch. Missiles that could destroy space stations bounced off their hulls like pebbles. Nothing worked. "Sir, they're adapting to our attacks in real Time, reported his weapons officer in a panicked voice. Whatever we hit them with, they become immune to it within seconds. 3 more worlds died in the next week. The Confederation fleet retreated again and again, unable to even slow down the mechanical invaders. Panic spread through the galaxy as billions of beings realized their peaceful civilization was helpless against this new threat. That's when the transmission came. It appeared on every communication channel simultaneously, reaching every ship, every space station, every inhabited world in the galaxy. The voice that spoke was human, but there was something different about it. It carried an authority that made even the proudest alien leaders pause and listen. Confederation forces. This is Commander Hajun of the Human Defense Fleet. Withdraw all vessels to minimum safe distance. We will handle the Devourer threat. On the bridge of the Confederation flagship, Admiral Vexnar stared at his communication screen in shock. Human? That's impossible. The humans were exiled centuries ago. They're all dead. But before he could respond, his sensors detected something that made his blood freeze. Ships were materializing out of empty space all around the Devourer fleet. Not just a few ships, but thousands of them. They seemed to phase into reality, from dimensions that shouldn't exist. The human vessels looked nothing like the primitive ships that had been cast into exile 500 years ago. These were works of art and terror combined. They moved like living things, their hulls shifting and changing as they flew. Some appeared to be made of pure energy. Others seemed to exist in multiple places at once. Captain Sumin commanded the assault ship, Void's Revenge, as it dove toward the largest Devourer vessel. Her body had been enhanced beyond anything the Confederation could imagine. Her reflexes operated faster than light itself. Her mind was connected to every other human in the fleet through the psychic network. The Devourers fired at her ship with weapons that had destroyed entire worlds. The beams passed through her vessel as if it wasn't there. She existed in a state between dimensions, able to choose when and where to be solid. Target their quantum cores, she commanded through the mental link. 10,000 human warriors heard her thoughts and responded as one organism. End this threat permanently. What happened next would be remembered in the galaxy's history books. For millennia, the human fleet attacked with weapons that seemed to rewrite the laws of physics. They fired concentrated possibility itself, turning the Devourer's own adaptive abilities against them. They used gravity as a weapon, crushing enemy ships into points of infinite density. They attacked on levels of reality that the mechanical invaders couldn't even perceive. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, the Devourer fleet, which had seemed unstoppable just moments before, was nothing but scattered atoms drifting in space. Not a single human ship had been damaged. The threat that had terrorized the galaxy was completely eliminated. Fleet Admiral Kyung-ho appeared on every screen across Confederation space. His image was transmitted simultaneously from a million hidden locations, proving that humanity had been watching and waiting in the shadows for longer than anyone had realized. He looked exactly like the humans the aliens remembered. But there was something profoundly different about him. His eyes held depths that spoke of centuries spent in the darkness between stars. His voice carried the weight of a species that had been forged by exile into something beyond mortal understanding. People of the galaxy, he said calmly, you are now under our protection. What you cast into the void has returned, not as your subjects or your equals, but as your guardians and your gods. On Confederation worlds across the galaxy, alien leaders who had voted for humanity's exile 5 centuries ago fell to their knees in terror and gratitude. They had thrown humanity out for being too violent, and in their hour of greatest need that same violence had saved them all. We do not seek revenge, Admiral Kyung-ho continued. We seek only to ensure that no threat like the Devourers ever endangers this galaxy again. You will live in peace under our watch. Your children will grow up safe under our protection. And in return, you will remember this day and what happens when you underestimate the species you tried to destroy. The age of human dominion had begun. The gods of war had returned home at last, not as the scattered refugees who had been cast out, but as the supreme rulers of a galaxy that would never again question their right to exist. In the darkness between stars, humanity had found its true destiny,